Good morning, my name's Chris Goodwin from Results-Driven Group, and today I want to talk about entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship training. Critical skills, especially during times of sort of COVID. Often people get entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship sort of mixed up. Really, they're both the same. The main sort of difference is that entrepreneurship is very much about coming up with your own new product sort of idea, thinking about something from a different sort of perspective. Whereas intrapreneurship is very much about developing an internal sort of product or service. But during times of COVID, such as now, absolutely fundamental that we start to embrace creativity and innovation with people at all sort of levels, giving them the confidence to sort of push out their own or potentially develop that internal intrapreneurship culture within an organization. So what I want to do is take you through some of the example tools which we use in our development programs when it comes to delivering either entrepreneurship courses which are open for anybody to attend. So that could be people who are starting out, people who could be coming to the end of their sort of school years. So it could be year 12, 13, 14, people leaving university, people who've just lost their job, or potentially people in business who suddenly have hit the wall regarding their existing products and services, and what they actually now need to do is develop a new way of thinking, to do things differently, not just to survive, but also to grow. The benefit is if we can help existing organizations grow, they then create jobs. Once they create jobs, they then create a sector. Once they create a sector, they create an industry. And then from there, it then starts to morph. So, for example, you know, when you look back, how many of you in the past have had a sort of Nokia phone? Whoever saw Apple coming? Nobody. It just came out of the blue. It came from nowhere. Quite fascinating. You know, a couple of years ago, I think they looked at the iPhone as the most successful product of all time. So, for me, entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship are just as important as each other. So, what I want to do is take you on a little bit of a journey just for the next sort of 25, 30 minutes and see where we get to. I haven't included all of the tools which we use on our programs, but I've just given you a flavor of some of the things which we use in certain aspects of the program. But the main thing is what we're looking at is the results-driven group sort of top 10, 12 skills when it comes to developing the skills of an entrepreneur. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves is what is entrepreneurship? And I suppose really it's about seeing things that other people don't see. So it's looking at the world in different sort of ways. So you might see a product or an idea, you might see somebody delivering it from a certain perspective, and you might think, you know what, I can do that better. Or there could be an opportunity there, and it's actually taking that opportunity and then driving it forward and turning it into a product, an idea, a process, a service, and then watching it sort of grow and bloom just like a flower. But often what we need to consider is the decision making we make. Often I will come up with 10 new ideas a month. I mean, I've been a serial entrepreneur since I was a small child. Sometimes I'll throw 10 new ideas at the wall each month and all 10 fall off. And to be honest, often you don't get that idea which puts you at the front of the wave. But for me, it's constantly trying different things from different perspectives and different times. And it's keeping going, especially sometimes during the dark times of lockdown and sort of COVID. My motivation levels were a little bit low, but now I feel sort of full of fire again. The ideas are sort of brewing. I can sort of see new products and services coming out in the future. And I'm busy. I'm very busy, but I'm pretty motivated as well. But the benefit is not just for me. The benefit is for my team of people, because I'm MD of an organization called the Results-Driven Group. And for me, it's about keeping them employed. It's about keeping them happy. It's about looking out for them. So, you know, I see my team as a sort of extended family, really. So for me, they're my responsibility. So no matter what comes at us regarding adversity and COVID, we will survive, we'll get through. It's one of those sort of years that you just have to look at it, we'll reflect on it in many moons to come, and we'll think, okay, this happened, that happened. Yeah, and it can change our lives forever, but we still have to keep positive, we still have to keep motivated, we still have to keep pushing. But if we make the correct decisions, and sometimes we have to take a risk, and they come off, then jackpot. And I suppose that next one, entrepreneurs have high levels of imagination and passion. And imagination, the amount of times I wake up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning with some crazy idea. And then the next morning at 8 o'clock when I start, I'll think, right, okay, what am I going to do about that today? Then sometimes I'll reflect and think, yeah, it was a little bit too far off the wall. But then I might look at it and think, do you know what? You've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years. It keeps coming back again and again and again. And for me, that's the passion management. So that's me thinking, okay, this could go. So it's about being passionate in the belief about it, but it's also being rational as well. And I suppose really, they tend to fill the gaps in society that others don't see. And I've been doing that for many, many years in my sort of organization. And it's just looking at things from different perspectives. It's putting a different sort of spin on things. But the most important thing of all, it's about the customer experience. And it's about delivering the best that you can for your customers. That will give you sort of ultimate pleasure, really, when it comes to surviving in the world of work, but also undertaking a career in which you believe in and sort of following, yes? So don't forget that last point on this one. We will fail time and time again, but you've got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and carry on. So why is entrepreneurship so important? I suppose really, when we think about the creative sort of enterprise, you know, the youngsters today, the bright young things that are coming through school, university, college, the world of work, you know, they are our future leaders. In 20 years' time, 25 years' time, they're going to be the MDs, the chief execs of the organizations of the future. So if we can inspire that creativity at a young age, the chances are that they will do really well either in their own enterprise or working for organizations. But if we don't light that spark at a young age, then sometimes it's an opportunity sort of lost. I mean, believe you me, it's never too old to become an entrepreneur. Sometimes I see the most fantastic people in their, you know, sort of 50s and 60s. They might have done 30 years in one career, but then they get a chance to sort of take redundancy and start again. But they still have that drive and passion, but the benefit that they have is all about experience over the world of work. Whereas sometimes when you are younger, you are going to make mistakes. You haven't got the experience. But that's when things like the guidance of a mentor is fundamental to being successful. So I think that's absolutely critical. Build your support network. And we have to consider, you know, society is always developing and changing. Look at what's happened in sort of recent months. You know, more and more of us now are sort of working from home. The same thing in colleges, universities, sort of schools. Most people are changing their sort of work environments. They've either got a desk at the kitchen table, it could be in the spare bedroom, it could be on your laptop on your knee. Not ideal. But do you know what? It's a way of developing and changing, and it's coping with adversity the way it comes at us at the sort of moment. So for me, it's thinking of those different sort of things. How many of you wish you'd invested in Zoom? Yeah, you know, you've seen the shares on Zoom sort of rise up now. Pretty fantastic. An idea, concept, and now look where it is. But really, entrepreneurs do spearhead change, and I think the real thing is they will have discussions. The amount of discussions that I have with my team, with customers. You know, I was in the Lakes with a bunch of fantastic delegates last week on the ILM Level 7 in coaching, and I let 3 of the delegates actually coach me in new products and ideas. Because even as a managing director and as an entrepreneur, it's still important for me to bounce my new products and ideas off different people that have no bias, that have different ways of looking at things. And I think that's quite fundamental, is actually developing that sort of trust in other people you may not know to bounce ideas off, no matter how crazy they are. So what I would say is just keep thinking, keep trying, keep talking until you sort of hit the jackpot. And I suppose really, what does it mean to become an entrepreneur? To develop the art of becoming creative. And that's what we'll actually look at in a bit, the 12 core skills which you actually need to become more creative, but also to become more entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial within your existing organization. And for me, creativity is sort of everything. And I always remember listening to a program on Radio 4. It's called The Educationalists, and the story goes it was about a head teacher went round to see children in a school at the age of 5, asked the question, how many of you want to be an artist? All the hands went up. because in the UK we start testing about the age of 7. Went into a classroom full of 7-year-olds, asked the same question, who wants to be an artist? How many hands went up? About 50%, 9, 25%, 11, a couple, 14, one hand. And then 16, no hands, 18, no hands. So just as an example, through the British education system, what we tend to do is drive out creativity by teaching you how to pass exams. Now, for me, it's fundamental. You know, when you think about how many questions the average sort of 5-year-old asks in a day, it tends to be about 45, and they normally start with why. When you think about the average number of questions the average 45-year-old asks in a day, it tends to be 5, because they've become less creative. So creativity is critical to this. And I suppose really that creativity then allows you to bring those new ideas and projects to life and actually try them, test them. If they fail, you pick yourself up again and you carry on. But also developing curiosity for change. If I do this, if I do that, what will happen? You know, if I start moving, where will it go to? And then eventually it becomes a way of life. Everything that you look at, you're looking at things from different angles, different perspectives. And that's quite important, you know, that you never stop thinking about it. And for me, I would say it's ingrained into my DNA and really important. But you can obviously tell by the way I'm talking, I'm very passionate about this sort of subject area. So really, when I think about entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship, both are critical for global growth, in the sense of entrepreneurship. When you look at the UK, I think we're somewhere in the region of 80 to 90% of our businesses are small to medium-sized enterprises. That's people, you know, organisations with 1 to 250 staff. So a massive engine. So you imagine how many entrepreneurs are out there. So really, for me, we've got to push that more, especially with the jobs market being sort of tightened. So what we've got to do now is encourage entrepreneurship with those people facing, you know, adversity, especially when it comes to being made redundant or leaving school or university or college, and thinking, you know what do I do? So for me, this has never been more important. So we've got to push to get these types of programs out across the whole of society and encourage entrepreneurship. You know, we need to become an entrepreneurial nation again. We used to be, we've been there. So now it's just as important to make it happen again. But really, when we look at that in tandem, you know, the entrepreneurship piece within an existing business, and it's developing the same skills, same knowledge, skills, and ability that you need to be an entrepreneur, but it's developing that safe culture within an organization to be able to take risks. And for me, that's fundamental, because if we get that wrong, then what that means is organizations, if they don't change fast enough, they'll do the dinosaur thing. They'll sort of die, go away, people get made redundant, they won't resurge again. So there's 4 things that we sort of face here. So obviously we've got volatility. So we've seen that with sort of COVID, the changing world, the economy, you know, poor leadership from some of our respective prime ministers and sort of presidents across the world. We've seen, you know, which is disheartening. Uncertainty, which way do we turn? You know, they change their minds every sort of 5 minutes. So we have to be aware that when we live in this type of world, that we have to deal with this. But also complexity. So, you know, complexity of the changing rules in society, complexity of actually trying to have some type of normality in there. And then eventually, you know, that sort of ambiguity, you know, unknown unknowns. What's happening? Is it okay to go to the shops? Is it okay to meet my friends next door? Is it okay to go to the pub with friends? Is it okay to wear a mask or not wear a mask? So things are changing daily, and it's quite frustrating for a lot of us. But now is the time to sort of seize the day. And, you know, when we look at that famous saying from the sort of SAS, he or she who dares wins, and that's what it's about. So that's what we're going to look at. He or she who dares wins will win in the future. Okay, so the core skills to be an entrepreneur. So the first thing we look at is curiosity. You need to be curious. You need to look at things from different perspectives. Time management, you need to be able to create the time to think in that curious way, to become more creative. Project management, you need to be able to manage the project from initial concept or idea right through to sort of project evaluation at the end and sort of thinking, right, okay, did that one work? That's strategic thinking. That's looking at the world from different ways, and it's thinking, what sets me out from my competitors? How do I need to do things differently? Then we have that sort of efficiency. How efficient are we in our decision making? Is it good, bad, ugly? Communication. We have to learn to communicate in people's currency. That's fundamental. But then branding. How do we want to be perceived in the world? How do we want to be perceived when it comes to sort of coming across and being perceived by our customers, by our colleagues, by our peers? But then resilience, that bounce back ability, that's fundamental, that skill set, especially in these current times. The ability to network, it's not just about online. It currently is at the moment, but in the future, we will have to do the face-to-face stuff when things drop back to some type of normality. Then finance management, there's no point in having the most fantastic idea in the world and not be able to manage the numbers. And then finally, we then start to look at sales. How are we going to get the product out there? How are we going to promote it? What sort of blockages we come up against? And then finally to the future, what next? What do we need to do to sort of scale up? So first thing we need to think about is curiosity. And this is fundamental. So eliminate I'm bored from your sort of vocabulary. Find time to look at things and do things in different ways. Surround yourself with creative people. Search for the positive in all situations. So no matter how negative you're feeling and how bad things are, there will always be a positive. There'll be an opportunity. So for example, for people who get made redundant, the first thing I say to them is what is something you've always wanted to do? Ask that question. Once they then think, right, okay, now I can do anything, it's either retraining, upskilling, or potentially trying to pursue a career again. Question everything. Sometimes we worry and we sort of panic. So my mantra there is question everything and accept nothing. Then also shake the tree. Do something different in the sense of, you know, speak to people in a different way, trying approaching a problem in a different way, try using creative problem solving tools, kind of developing a new persona, and finally conquer fear, build your confidence, sort of move forward. So, you know, you can sort of believe in yourself or try new things you've never done, learn a new language, a new skill, whatever it takes to sort of, you know, set that fire to that curiosity sort of piece. Next thing, sort of time management. And this is just one of the tools which we use, you know, in time management. So we look at the Eisenhower sort of matrix. So what's really interesting here, if it's urgent and important, you know, do it first. That's critical. You know, if it's urgent but not important, then sort of delegate it, yes? You know, delegate it to a peer, a colleague. If you haven't got people to delegate stuff, members of your family, friends. If it's important but not urgent, then schedule it. That could be something further down the project. And then not urgent or important, don't bother with it. Just put it to one side. You have to have the ability to be able to create time to become an entrepreneur. If you can't create the time, then you'll fail, I'm afraid. Next thing is project management. But it's not just about managing the project. Where most people go wrong, most entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, is when it actually comes to evaluating the project. So really, when I love the traffic light one here, you know, what should we stop doing? What do we need to consider adapting for future use? What did we do well that should be continued next time? In training, we tend to use the 3 C's ending. What things are you going to cease, commence, and sort of continue? And we always have to do that in every single project or idea which we look at. And for me, it's very much about washing your hands at the end of the sort of process and thinking, right, okay, what did we learn from that? What would we do differently next time? You know, we ran our first face-to-face socially distanced course in the lakes last week. And on the Thursday evening, I said to the delegates, you know, what can we prove regarding our safety measures regarding COVID next time? And we had a really good discussion. The sort of 20 minutes, half an hour. I learned a hell of a lot. So I think feedback from the people around you is fundamental, especially when we're facing uncertain times. So key skill 4, very much about that strategic sort of thinking. And for me, when we actually start looking at the sort of Griner curve, what we have is growth through sort of creativity. That's phase 1. But the things you'll come across here is the sort of leadership crisis. How do we handle this within the business? You know, what do we need to do? Who is actually leading the organization? Next thing we look at in the sort of phase 2 is growth through sort of direction. Are we going the sort of correct way? Do we need to change what we're doing? 4, as the organization gets sort of bigger, you know, growth through delegation. Do we have the correct people around us? Do the people who we want to delegate to have the correct skills to delegate down to? And then as we start to go further, 4 is growth through coordination and sort of monitoring, yes? That could be staff crisis. Do we have the correct sort of people in the organization? Do we need to outsource certain things? 5, it could be growth through collaboration. That could be with manufacturers, it could be with the universities. And for me, then it's about actually, do we have the right partners on board? Fundamental questions you've got to ask yourself. And then finally, when we think about growth through extra organizational solutions, so potentially this could be the unknown sort of crisis that you face in the future. Will the market change? Will your competitors come from around the corner? Will they do something differently? So for me, you've always got to be thinking ahead. That's that strategic sort of piece. So key skill 4, that strategic thinking is sort of fundamental. So we start moving on to key skill 5, efficiency. CPS is creative problem solving. But for me, you've got to differentiate your product, your idea, your service. So defining your USP, your sort of unique selling point. So first thing, analyze the competition. You know, what do they do, good, bad, indifferent from you? Determine what sets you apart. What's really fundamental about what you do. You know, if you have a differentiator, then invent one. This is where creativity comes in. People want different. They don't want same old, same old. Identify consumer pain points. And what that means is, what issues do customers face? You know, how do they struggle with certain sort of things? And they're the things that you have to consider. You know, when you think about how many of us actually used to wear a watch, how many of us don't wear a watch now because your smartphone's got a clock on it. You know, your smartphone's got an alarm on it. It's, you know, they're becoming more and more creative with tech every day. So for me, it's about embracing that change. Offer a guarantee. You know, as a result of people using your products and services, this is what you guarantee. So for example, you know, when it comes to our residential courses in the Lake District, I know I can be the most price competitive in the country when it comes to offering residential retail programs, because I've done my market research and I know the experience we give is completely different and unique from anybody else. And I actually challenge people to go out there and find the same product, the same service for the same price. And if they do, I will refund them the difference. Nobody's ever come up to me yet. So there you go, there's confidence. Be specific and concrete. What are you actually offering? What is your offering? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And then finally, number 7, never make a claim you can't fulfill. This is about professionalism. This is about trust. This is about repeat business. This is about people starting to have certainty and believability in what you do. And then your products and services will grow sort of further. Next thing we have to think about is key skill number 6. Communication, fundamental. And we have to learn to communicate in people's currency. So for example, if I go into a bank, how would I dress? I put a pinstripe suit on. If I was to go into UNICEF, I would talk the language of children. If I was to go into the NHS, I would talk the language of care. So it's very much about changing your communication style according to the audience. And it's the same thing when it comes to promoting your products and services. So key skill 7, branding. So this is about your personal branding. How do you want to be perceived within your audience? So for example, if you manufacture toys, how do you want the market to perceive you? Are you perceived as being innovative and sort of creative? And it's all about the features and benefits and the values that you have. So what are the features of working with Chris Goodwin? What are the benefits of working with Chris Goodwin? What is his core values? And overall, what's your brand essence? So for me, it would be very much about developing people. That's what we do. That's what people know me for. And also 2 other mantras: evidence-based decision making, and if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So this resilience piece is absolutely fundamental. This is the bounce back ability. It's amazing how many people become deflated when something goes wrong, because you won't always get it right first time. You might have to try 50 things to actually get it right. So really, for me, it's about visualizing that positive sort of image of the future and thinking, right, okay, now I'm here, 6 months time, I'm going to be up here. But goal setting is critical as well. So this is what I want to achieve. That's why we underpin everything what we do with coaching. But also having that desire to achieve those goals. It's okay, set a goal. If you then don't go ahead and do it, it's a bit of a waste of time. You really struggle then to become an entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur, you're better off just pushing a normal job. I suppose the next thing we then look at is sort of empathy and compassion. It is important, but really what it's about is we don't have to worry about what everybody else thinks. We just have to push through and, you know, just keep sort of going. So that's fundamental. We're aware of what's happening in the world around us, but we still have to sort of keep moving. And then that final one Resilient people don't think of themselves as victims. They focus their time and energy on changing the things they have to control over. So for me, there's one mantra here. Just look at what you can affect. So what can you actually affect? Yes, that way you'll be successful. 9 is networking. So often when you meet somebody for the first time, it could be via Facebook, it could be via LinkedIn, Instagram, Zoom, Teams, whatever sort of medium you're using. What we often do, what's the first thing we tend to do? We tend to talk about ourselves. It's not about talking about yourselves. It's about the you grade. Tell me about you. Tell me about your projects. Tell me about your ideas. Tell me about what you want to achieve here. So for me, that's about developing the rapport piece, which is sort of fundamental sort of going forward. And then it's about the art of sort of working a room. So for me, about working a room, it's about looking for the opportunities when you can then go and talk to the key people that you need to speak to, which is sort of fundamental when it comes to be able to get a return on investment and networking. 10, finance management. So we start looking at return on investment, return on expectation. And put quite simply, return on investment, if I invest £100 on a product, what do I expect my return to be? So for example, in year 1, if I invest £100 into a product, will I expect to get £50 return, £100 return, £5,000 return? So that's very much about thinking how much you've got in one hand and how much you want to get out the other hand. Return on expectation is thinking, I've got a brand new product or idea, I've got a sum of money I want to invest. So let's say I invest £100 in a new product development. This is what I hope I will achieve. So it's not guaranteed. So that's the main difference in between ROI and sort of ROE. So fundamental when it comes to understanding your numbers, think Dragon's Den, think about the questions they ask. And then finally, sales. So you are going to come across resistance because people will always be questioning you. They'll always be challenging you when it comes to thinking about things in different sort of ways. So, you know, I might be selling a new type of, I don't know, health product. And one of my potential buyers might say, well, that's the same with blah, blah, blah soup. Then you might have to say, right, okay, let's stop, let's wind it back. Let's clarify what we're talking about here. This is why my soup is different from your soup. These are the benefits. This is why it stands out. Organize your ideas, communicate it in their currency so they can see the benefit of actually undertaking or buying your soup rather than something else. Proceed, say, well, let's try it. You know, let's just run it for a month. You know, we'll take the hit for promoting that product for the first sort of month. Examine your progress. Are people taking to it? People liking it? And then so on. So for me, if you can deal with the actual resistance when it comes from people buying your products, you'll be even more successful. But that's about knowing your product intimately, what it can and what it can't do. And then finally, to the future, how do we sort of scale up? And this for me is very much about thinking, right, okay, we've got to the stage, we've launched the product, some people have tried it. How do we then start to make it move? So processes within the organization, keep them as simple as possible. Focus on delighting your customers, collect customer feedback. I think now we're over 2,000 reviews at 4.7 out of 5. So pretty good, 94% on our customer base across all of our product range. So we have to put a lot of time, effort and energy for maintaining a review score of that sort of high. Invest in your employees. You know, you actually have to invest in your people. If you invest in your people, they will come with you all the way. Stay tuned into your business. Don't go away and think, okay, it's working now, now's the time to play. No, keep very close to the ground. There are no shortcuts in scaling, so you have to do it properly. You know, this is where mentoring and coaching come in. So seek that business mentor, seek that personal coach. And it's okay to ask for help. Don't be afraid to do that. That's absolutely fine. Time is a precious commodity, so please do spend it on the things that are going to work for you. But also learning to say no. You can't be all things to all people. And then, you know, finally grow by the data. So forget speculation. Let's just concentrate on the sort of numbers. So hopefully this has given you an idea of the sort of tools and skills which you can use when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. But these things we need to think about. We do need the leadership and vision to be able to do things differently. We have to be creative and innovative. We have to be able to motivate and inspire our people. If we don't bring our people with us, it's never going to work. But also, we have to have the ability to be able to flex as and when the wind changes, which it does it on a daily basis at this current moment in time. Belief, trust in ourselves and others. If we've done it before, we do it again and again and again. And I suppose the discipline and determination to keep going when facing adversity. So that's picking yourself up, dusting yourself off and saying, right, bring it on. But the final piece is quite funny. Certainty that we are taking the right path with our ideas. You know, will it work? And then finally, just to sum up, you know, which path will you take? So really, if this is of interest, you've got my contacts below. But thank you for listening. Much appreciated.